Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Mayhem's Children by Edward Aubry, narrated by C.S.E. Cooney. Part 1. Progeny. Chapter 1. Sabotage. Wrigley Field survived. So much of the city of New Chicago had been built from scratch over its 9-year history, it bore little resemblance to its namesake. The Mayhem Wave wiped most familiar buildings out of existence, leaving in its wake little more than wilderness and scraps. Yet Wrigley stood, carrying the torch for a world all but gone. Reasoning that no better symbol could be found for perseverance in the face of apparent hopelessness than the Chicago Cubs, the founders of the new city declared Wrigley's survival an omen, and a national pastime was reborn. On opening day, nearly 8 years after saving the world, Harrison Cody took his son to a ball game. "You want a beer?" Mitchell looked at him with a mixture of amusement and uncertainty. "I think corruption of a minor is still a real thing. Also, ick." Harrison laughed and waved to a vendor. "Suit yourself." Mitchell's relationship to Harrison defied traditional definition. Harrison had been his adopted father for less than a year before Mitchell's father returned from a magically induced oblivion. Though no longer legal family, they stayed close over the years, and with Mitchell about to turn 18, these outings would dwindle. He hoped the ball game would give them an opportunity for some 11th hour bonding, but Mitchell spent a fair portion of his time staring off into space. 2 innings in, when he managed not to notice a 2-run homer, Harrison took him for a walk. "Talk to me," he said. "What's going on?" "Nothing," said Mitchell without making eye contact. "Nothing? Asked Harrison. "Or nothing you want to talk about?" Mitchell shrugged. "The second one?" "Hey, this is me." Harrison put his hand on Mitchell's shoulder. "Anything you tell me is privileged information. If you need to vent, I'm your guy. Remember? All the perks of having a parent and none of the pesky judgment." He paused there, then lowered his voice. "If you're in trouble, you know how many strings I can pull with a single phone call, right?" "I'm not in trouble." "Is it school stuff?" Mitchell shook his head. "Girl stuff?" Mitchell laughed at that. "I wish. Throw me a bone, sport. You're safe here. Besides, I've got all kinds of patronizing advice to offer." Mitchell finally looked at him. "It's Dad's stuff." "Oh," said Harrison. "Shit. I'm sorry." "No, it's okay," said Mitchell. "It's just a thing. I don't know. I just feel like he doesn't get me." A small beep came from Harrison's shirt pocket, and he sighed in irritation. "Hold that thought." He removed an object the size and shape of a pen and spoke into it. "Cody?" It spoke back to him in a female voice that sounded full despite the tiny speaker. "We need you to come in, sir." "Why?" The voice paused, and Harrison frowned. As an assistant director in the New Chicago Security Agency, he understood a call back to the office would surely mean a matter of some urgency, and he would drop everything to address it. He did, however, consider himself entitled to demand an explanation for why he would need to leave his son alone at a Cubs game, especially in the middle of a sensitive conversation. After a bit, she said, "It's a missing persons case." That made things less clear. "Who? Missing persons is a police matter. Why are we getting involved in this?" "That's all I'm authorized to say," she said. "This is a secure line, Felicia." Harrison took a moment to look at Mitchell and put his finger to his lips. Mitchell nodded. In truth, the likelihood that Mitchell could hear enough of what came from that speaker to understand it was slim. The technology was designed for stealth, with a narrow range of audibility. "And I need to know." Another pause. "Hold, please." Mitchell gave Harrison a questioning look, still not speaking. Harrison shrugged. After a few seconds, a reply came in the crisp, British-accented voice of the NCSA director, Alec Baker. "It's Siobhan Roark." Mitchell's eyes went 1 degree wider. That one he heard. "Understood. I'm coming in right now." Harrison put the device back in his pocket. "Go," said Mitchell. Harrison pulled out a small PDA and fidgeted with it. "Sorry about this. I'll call you later today. I just transferred $50 to your card." "For what?" asked Mitchell. "In case you decide you need 10 hot dogs." He put his hand on Mitchell's shoulder. "Let's finish this conversation as soon as I can get away, okay?" Mitchell nodded. Harrison took in the hangdog look on his son's face with a new, added level of worry. This new situation and new uncertainty compounded whatever personal problems Mitchell had. One of his 29 adopted sisters had gone missing. "Talk to me." The new Chicago security agency housed its headquarters in a reclaimed office building. They had imprisoned Harrison here once. Now he had an office and a staff. His assistant, Felicia, met him at the door and handed him a small data device as they walked to the elevator. She looked considerably younger than her 30 years, with a mop of black curls on top of a fair-skinned, slender face. Her professionalism belied any youthful first impressions she might give. "Miss Roark failed to report to work yesterday morning," she said. "No one has reported contact with her since approximately 7 a.m. when she left her home. Her boyfriend was the last person to see her and reported her missing this morning." "Is he a suspect?" Harrison opened a file on the small screen with his thumbprint and skimmed it as they talked. "Not at this time. The police aren't ruling him out, but so far his story holds up." Harrison nodded, carefully omitting his opinion. He had met Siobhan's boyfriend on at least one occasion, though he couldn't recall his name at that moment, and he seemed like a decent guy. But admitting that at this junction might come across as unprofessional, especially if he turned out to be wrong. "What's our contribution to the investigation?" "I recalled Blevins and York right before I called you," she said. "Agent York is with the police right now, coordinating resources. Blevins is our top man for this kind of work, but he was on a deep cover assignment and isn't expected back until tomorrow afternoon." They stopped at the elevator. Harrison continued to skim the file in front of him, most of it a simple acknowledgement of how little hard information anyone actually had. They stepped into the car. "York was on an important assignment as well. On whose authority did you pull them from the field?" "Mine," she said. "This is your daughter, sir." He raised an eyebrow at that. By taking responsibility for that call herself, especially before contacting him, she had shielded Harrison from accusations of impropriety and misuse of agency personnel. He doubted it would come to that, but the precaution reminded him how valuable she had been to him in his role as an administrator. "Thank you." She nodded. They reached his floor. "Have York report to me directly. I want hourly updates. I also want to know how many people we can free up for this immediately if it turns into a manhunt, and I want those people put on call." "Understood." She left Harrison at the door to his office. He dropped the data device on his desk and collapsed into the black leather chair behind it. The new Chicago security agency had originally recruited Harrison as the result of a unique talent he had acquired entirely by chance, a highly specialized form of telekinesis. He had been content enough with that arrangement until, on his first major mission, he proved himself of worth beyond his special talent. On his return, his contributions led to him assuming a leadership role in the agency, and eventually rising to the post of assistant director. In the face of this new crisis, he wondered, as he often did, whether he was in over his head. Certainly, with Siobhan's life potentially at risk, it felt like something out of his area of expertise. He had that very thought when he opened his desk drawer and found the bomb. For a moment he stared at it, struggling to believe what he saw. The thought of someone trying to assassinate him in such a dramatic manner did not surprise him, But the absurdly crude design of the device, coupled with the extraordinarily ineffective method of detonation, gave him pause. In his drawer sat nothing more than 3 sticks of dynamite, wired to a timer with oversized red LED digits. According to the clearly displayed countdown, Harrison had 6 hours and 19 minutes left before the bomb blew. Even setting aside its cartoonish appearance and the fact he had almost an entire workday to evacuate the building, this bomb could never work. Ever since the Mayhem event, the chemical reactions that drove conventional explosives and firearms no longer generated the energy they needed to be effective weapons. Once that timer ran down to 0, the blasting cap might get hot, but it wouldn't set off a charge. Those 3 sticks of dynamite would smolder and turn to ash, if they ignited at all. For all those reasons, he suspected the object ticking down in his desk drawer was a magical weapon. He removed the communication device from his shirt pocket and spoke into it. "Felicia, I need Special Agent Logan in my office immediately. This is top priority." "Understood," she said. "Baker," said Harrison without pause. By voice command, the device directed his call accordingly. "This is Cody. There is a bomb in my office on a timer set to go off in 6 hours. "Good grief," came the reply. "Call Logan." "Already did. And stay put. Anyone's guess what will set that thing off." "Great," said Harrison, now glued to his seat. 8 minutes later, Alec Baker entered Harrison's office. The director of the new Chicago Security Agency walked with a cane, and had done so ever since suffering nerve damage from a wound in his right leg. "Let's see it." "Bottom right drawer," said Harrison. Alec hobbled his way around the desk and crouched down to inspect the contents of the open drawer. He shook his head. "Only you." "Nice," said Harrison. "Am I right to believe this bomb poses no literal threats? Dynamite doesn't explode anymore, right?" Alec did not take his eyes off the bomb. "It probably won't explode. I'd say it's meant to do something, though. Wouldn't be much point to go to all this trouble for no effect. Magic, most likely. Anyone's guess what that timer is counting down to? We're not going to try to defuse it, are we?" Alec looked up at Harrison. "I assume by we you don't mean the 2 of us, but no, we're not. I called in a wizard to have a look at it. Probably moot anyway if Logan gets here first." Harrison frowned. "Wizard?" "Wizard. And do try to be cordial this time." Harrison's experience with wizards was limited to ways in which he and they annoyed each other. A handful of them carried over from Glimmer's world, and despite the fact the pixie had been gone for years, he still thought of it in those terms. But most were ordinary humans who had a knack for wielding magic. It had taken several years to discover there existed ways for ordinary humans to use magic at all, and despite great strides in that field since then, few natives of Harrison's world could match their magical world counterparts in skill or scope. "Which one?" asked Harrison. "Aplomado." Harrison groaned. "You mean Jerry?" "I mean Aplomado. Don't call him Jerry." "I'll try not to," Harrison lied. Alec glowered at him. "See that you do. This is no game to him, Cody. These people have skills you and I would have to put our lives on hold for years to acquire, if we even had the aptitude, which is doubtful. If he wants to give himself a nonsense name, it's a kind of falcon." Alec raised his brows at that. "Is it?" Harrison nodded. "I looked it up. April says it's also a bastardization of the Spanish for lead-colored. I mentioned that to him a few weeks ago. You might have noticed that's around the time he stopped calling himself Aplomado the Grey, since, he was pretty much calling himself Gray the Grey." Alec rubbed his chin in thought. "All right, that is a bit pretentious. I'm saying." A knock came from Harrison's office door. In it stood a man dressed in a gray robe holding a pointed felt hat. He had a meticulously trimmed and completely gray, though obviously dyed, goatee and matching long, wavy hair.
Bomb?
Drawer, said Harrison. Aplomado drifted to Harrison's desk and dropped his hat on it as Alec stepped out of his way. Behind his back, Harrison mouthed, "Jerry," which earned him a rap on the knee from Alec's cane.
"This will kill everyone in the building," said Aplomado. "I assume you already know the timer is accelerating?"
"What?" said Harrison. "No, I didn't know that."
Said Aplomado. "It appears to be progressing geometrically, but even if you didn't work that out, and I would never expect you to see it on your own, the clock on your wall should have been a dead giveaway. How long has it been since you discovered this device?"
Harrison looked to Alec for help, who looked at his watch. "You called it in 11 minutes ago."
"Have a look,"
said Aplomado. Harrison peered into his desk drawer where the timer rolled over from 6 hours to 5:59.
"It's advanced 20 minutes since then."
Alec pulled a communicator from his shirt pocket.
"Level 1 evacuation on my authorization."
Seconds later, a klaxon sounded, followed by activity in the hallway outside Harrison's open door as the staff scrambled to exit the building in an orderly but swift fashion.
"How long?"
he said to Aplomado.
9 minutes of real time. Maybe. That's an estimate, assuming the countdown function remains consistent."
"Minimum safe distance?"
"Anyone not physically touching the building is safe. This is a curse, not a bomb. When it goes off, the entire structure will be turned into a deadly contact poison. If you make skin contact with so much as a doorknob, you will die. The entire building will need to be quarantined. If you try to demolish it, the dust will contaminate the entire city."
Harrison looked around himself, trying to assess anything of value he needed to grab on his way out. As he swept past his own desk, Aplomado looked him in the eyes.
"If you need to come back for something sensitive, you might be safe in an environment suit, which you would then have to incinerate, but I wouldn't risk it. Whatever you are looking for right now, you better find it and take it with you."
"You can't defuse this?" asked Alec.
Aplomado shook his head. "It would take me at least half an hour to determine the specifics of the spell to counter it, and there are safeties in place to prevent tampering or scrutiny. It is very advanced work. Mallory might be able to stop this thing, but she would never get here in time. It is beyond me. I am sorry."
"What about Sarah?" asked Harrison. "She's already on her way."
"That might work," said Aplomado, "but I really wouldn't know. Telekinesis is outside the scope of my expertise."
As the wizard stood and retrieved his hat, Alec said into his communicator, "Magical Agent Mallory to A.D. Cody's office immediately. Override evacuation protocol for that agent and for Special Agent Logan."
"Mallory will never make it here," said Aplomado.
"Our problem," said Alec. "Dismissed, Agent." Aplomado nodded and departed.
"How long are we going to wait for them?"
asked Harrison.
9 minutes, said Alec, "which I suggest you use to find us 2 pairs of gloves."
8 minutes later, 2 men rushed into Harrison's office, escorting a frightened and overwhelmed woman in her early 40s by both arms. "Here," said Harrison. They took her to Harrison's desk and released her. He pointed to the bomb, and she looked directly at it.
"Oh my God," said Sarah Logan. "Is that a bomb?"
Harrison read the timer, now frozen at 35 seconds.
"Not anymore."
He removed the wool mittens he had secured from the lost and found box in the break lounge.
"Thank you."
Sarah rubbed her face with both hands. "May I sit down?" Harrison pulled up his leather chair, and she flopped into it. "Are you able to tell me what just happened, Director?" "Not much to tell that isn't already obvious. Cody found that bomb in his desk about 20 minutes ago. The first thing he did was call for you, which happened to be the correct solution." Like Harrison, Sarah picked up a highly specialized telekinetic ability on the day the world as everyone knew it ended. Her talent was the ability to stop any clock with a glance, entirely involuntarily and invariably permanent. The timer on that bomb would never again read anything but 35 seconds. "Right," she said. "Got it. Just give me a few minutes to burn off this adrenaline." "Take your time," said Harrison. "There are about 20 undergrads right now who probably think I was just arrested." Harrison laughed. "Sorry about that. We'll give the university a statement." She waved away the suggestion. "The school knows I'm always on call. It's my students who don't. I'll have some explaining to do tomorrow." She looked up with a weak smile. "It's good to see you. We should probably find better ways to get together." "Agreed. How's Saturday? Dinner at our place?" "Ha! You're on. Should we bring Adler or get a sitter?" "Bring 'em," said Harrison. "We'll make it a family thing." "Done and done." She looked at Alec. "Am I finished here, Doctor?" "Yes," he said. "Would you like a ride back to work?" "Nah, thanks, but that was my last class, and I think I'd rather just walk home at this point." She stood and gave Harrison a hug. "Saturday. 5-ish," he said. "See you then." She punctuated this with a very unagent-like kiss on the cheek. "Good day, Director Baker." Alec nodded. "Special Agent Logan?" She strolled out the door. "Not to change the subject," said Harrison, "but are we still moving on this missing persons investigation?" Alec crouched down to scrutinize the inert bomb, taking care not to touch it. "I'd say we have 2 priority investigations now." Chapter 2. Melody. Dorothy O'Neill stood in the hallway outside the Cody's apartment for a full 5 minutes, debating whether to ring the bell. She had no fear of being unwelcome, nor anxiety about how they would receive her. Her hesitance sprang from a different difficulty, and had anyone asked her about it, she would have been sorely pressed to articulate it. It had, in fact, become an ingrained part of her routine of late. Dorothy's visits to Harrison and his family, though fairly regular, always began this way. She doubted Harrison had any notion of how much time she spent in this hallway, poised to enter his home, and not able to do so. Most days she ventured in. Some days she went home unannounced. Though she would never be able to express it in simple terms, the problem was not complicated. Harrison was Dorothy's father. He had only ever acted as such for a span of less than half a year in her early adolescence, the only span of her life she truly felt she had one. She knew her biological father, but he stopped being a part of her life before her 9th birthday. Both of her sisters disappeared when the Mayhem Wave came through on May 30, 2004, and her mother along with them, at least at first. When Harrison traveled to the far end of the globe a year later to help prevent the world from being destroyed, he did something that caused her mother to return. Something magical. The full explanation went over her head. What mattered was she had her mother back. But that glorious restoration came at the price of leaving the only father she had ever truly known, ever truly loved. "Hey, Dottie." Dorothy jumped, startled out of her ruminations. She spun to find the source of her surprise in Claudia de Queiroz, not a welcome sight in Dorothy's current frame of mind. She had known Claudia since she was 14, and Claudia 15. Claudia had been her first friend in New Chicago, providing support she sorely needed at the time. She had also been responsible for Harrison being arrested the day they arrived, which set an ambivalent tone for their relationship. They grew close within days of that meeting, but the closeness held an edge of wariness. In the years since, it had ranged from strained to confusing. Around the time Dorothy was 16, Claudia began to treat her with deliberate indifference, and Dorothy came to believe that Claudia didn't see her as interesting enough or cool enough to be a true friend anymore. As a result, she spent most of her adolescence pining for Claudia's respect. Seeing her now reaffirmed her pining had never faded. She offered her best attempt to be blasé. "Hello, Claude." You heard about Siobhan? Asked Claudia. Dorothy frowned. She had braced herself for some snarky rejoinder, Claudia's usual form of conversation. No. What happened to Siobhan? Claudia gave her a quizzical look. Even in confusion, Dorothy found her striking. The skunk stripe in Claudia's hair, which Dorothy long assumed to be an affectation until discovering she had a hereditary condition called poliosis, cut a stark contrast to her dark Brazilian complexion. Dorothy felt upstaged by Claudia's appearance, particularly compared to her own pale skin and straight strawberry blonde hair. Trading in her thick glasses years earlier in favor of corrective eye surgery had helped boost her opinion of her own appearance, but standing beside Claudia, she felt generic. "No one knows," said Claudia. "She's been missing for 2 days. I thought that's why you were here." Dorothy resisted the impulse to tell Claudia she had no need to justify visiting her own father. Apart from not being eager to discuss her true reason for being there, for hoping to find some comfort with family in a rough patch of her life, this unexpected information pushed aside any rivalry between the two of them. "I didn't know that." Like Dorothy, Siobhan Roark was, at least nominally, one of Harrison's adopted daughters. Of the women who shared that distinction, Siobhan was one of the few Dorothy considered a close friend. That she had gone missing triggered in Dorothy not only a fear for her safety, but also guilt as she tried to recall when they last spoke. "Well, I'm sure they'll be glad to see you," said Claudia. Dorothy nodded, not sure who they were, and too self-conscious to ask. After a moment's awkward silence, Claudia said, "Did you knock?" "Oh," said Dorothy, no." Claudia reached past her to rap on the door. After a few seconds, it swung inward, and the sight of Harrison's wife April greeted them. She hugged each one in turn without preamble. Dorothy wished she could find comfort in the gesture. April pointed to Claudia. "Coffee, 1 sugar, no cream." She turned her finger to Dorothy. "Chamomile tea with honey." "Yes, please," said both, and Dorothy smiled, remembering why she had come here in the first place. Not even in the door yet, and already being cared for. April led them inside, where Harrison and 4 women sat around the dining room table. They had extended it with leaves, implying more expected guests. Of the 4 who had arrived ahead of her, she recognized 3 of Harrison's adopted daughters and Sarah Logan in the middle of a discussion. Harrison waved Claudia and Dorothy over to join them. "I'm just saying we shouldn't be so quick to jump on the idea she doesn't want to be found," said one of the women at the table as Dorothy pulled up a chair. Sharp features, slender frame, straight brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. This was Melissa Lear. Like most of her sisters, Dorothy did not know her well. With her sat Rebecca Wheeler and Anna Bruce. Dorothy knew Anna better, but was surprised to see how much weight she had put on since the last time they saw each other. "Hi," Melissa said to Claudia and Dorothy with a nod. "Hi," said Claudia. "That's not what I'm saying at all," said Rebecca. Of the people here, Dorothy knew her the best, but mostly on reputation. Rebecca had been the oldest of the captives, and had taken on the role of den mother through their ordeal. Whether from natural inclination or necessity, she had risen to the challenge, and every one of them still treated her like a leader. After Harrison rescued them, she gladly handed those reins over to him, and then the girls returned parents. But that respect endured. Slightly below average height, she wore her dirty blonde hair in a girlish bob. But what she might have lacked in visual command, she made up for with assertiveness, intelligence, and charisma. "I'm only asking if anyone has seriously considered the possibility she ran away on her own. I'm as happy as anyone to send the entire government of New Chicago looking for her. I just think part of that effort should include looking for her in places she might have gone on her own." "Of course we are," said Harrison. "That's standard. What little we have to go on doesn't point in that direction, though." "Becca has a point," said Anna. Maybe you should be weighing that possibility more heavily. Siobhan isn't...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?